From Atlanta, Georgia, welcome to Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, a podcast for women on leadership and life skills with Rhea Story. Rhea shares powerful life and leadership principles, helping you maximize your potential and become the woman God created you to be.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode, part 1 of 3 on what I call the resilience triad. This concept really is something that I've thought about a lot over the years, or being resilient, obviously, because that's really a focus for me in my work and overcoming the abuse that I experienced growing up. But not just focusing on that, but really, how do I help other people move beyond that? So resilience is something that's just kind of there in the back of my mind. I've learned how to be resilient. How do I help others? So this is something that I love to think about. How do we break down what the characteristics of resilience are? And I talk about the 3 phases of resilience, and I've done that in some other podcasts based on my book, Beyond Bound and Broken. But I really want to break down what are the elements of resilience. So not the phases, that's a little bit different, and how and when we move through the phases of resistance, but what are the elements of resilience? So I'm reading a really good book by Judith Herman, and it's the title of it is Trauma and Recovery, the Aftermath of Violence. And I'm probably about a fourth of the way through it. So it's a little bit bigger book, definitely thicker, and a lot of psychology in there. And so really getting some good gold nuggets out of there. But one of the things that I read the other day really made me think about this in terms of resilience and what are the elements of resilience. And Dr. Herman is talking about, in this particular section, a study of Vietnam veterans who did not develop PTSD, in spite of experiencing much of the same heavy combat and things that their peers did. But there was a group of them that did not develop PTSD as expected, considering the conditions they were in. And she talks about one of the key elements when they studied this group. One of the key elements that they had was an internal locus of control. Now that's a psychology term, and one we don't use a lot. But I believe that internal locus of control is really one of the elements of what I call the resilience triad. It's one of the 3 things that I think help us be more resilient in life. And just based on my early reading of her work, it seems like she thinks that's an important element as well. So I wanted to dig into that just a little bit. I mean, first of all, what is a locus of control? And why is it important? And where do I find it? And where do I get one? So I wanted to dig into that just a little bit on today's episode. So, an internal locus of control is basically the extent to which we believe we can control our lives. An external locus of control would mean we don't think that we can control or affect our lives or circumstances at all. So resilient people have an internal locus of control. They believe that they can affect or influence their world around them, their circumstances. And the degree to which they do that determines their success in life. So this kind of has a profound effect on our attitude, because number one, if we believe that we cannot control or affect the world around us at all, we tend to embrace a victim mindset. And that means that there's no real reason for us to try to do anything better, because we're blaming external circumstances or something around us for what's going on in our life. Now, I'll be the first person to tell you we cannot control everything that happens to us in life, but what we can control is how we respond to it and what we do about it. And we control the choices that we make. So we may not can control everything. I'm not saying that we can control or prevent bad things from happening in life, but what we can control is our response to it. And that's where it's a key focus to make sure that we have an internal locus of control, that we're not blaming everything around us and saying, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. Because when we do that, we embrace that victim mindset. I talked about in episode number 34, I talked about mindset matters. And I gave the example of my recent marathon where I'd had the goal of coming in at 4 hours, and I came in at 4 hours and 5 seconds. And really, I consider that a success in meeting that goal. But on that episode, I talked about my tendency to blame the course conditions and the last minute course change due to the flooding. And I blamed other things in my mind. When I crossed that finish line, I started immediately blaming other things around me for being 5 seconds over 4 hours, 5 seconds. And then I had to catch myself, because there I was blaming external conditions around me for coming in 5 seconds later. Now, is it true that there was a course change? Absolutely. Is it true that there was more traffic on the course, and definitely it was hot, and sure, all of those things are true. But is there something else I could have done to come in 5 seconds faster? Could I have trained a little harder? Could I have eaten better in the weeks leading up? Absolutely. I'm sure, I guarantee you, there's something I could have done to improve that time 5 seconds. So my point here is that it's very easy for us to shift into that mindset of an external locus of control. But when we can embrace that internal locus of control and remind ourselves that we can control and influence the things that happen to us. Now, there again, we cannot control everything, but we absolutely can control our response to everything. And that really means that we are in control of our life. And that gives us a lot of freedom. But resilient people believe that they can affect the world around us. And it starts with our mind. It starts with our internal locus of control and saying, what can I do? What can I focus on that I can do? There are always going to be things we cannot control, but what can I focus on that I can control and influence? I've shared with you some of my story, and after I left my parents' house and I left home, and I didn't have a job or money, or I didn't have a high school diploma. I'd never been to school, and after I left, I realized that I needed a job. I needed to make some money, and so I looked around, and I thought, well, I don't even know how to go about getting a job. And so Max suggested that look in the newspaper. And back then, the newspaper was much bigger, because we didn't have the internet as much access to the internet then. And so I'd look through the newspaper and look through the jobs posted, and that didn't work. I still didn't get a job. And I went to an employment agency, and I took a typing test and passed it with flying colors, but it didn't give me a job. And so then I just started driving around town. And because I knew that getting a job wasn't going to just happen by accident. Nobody was going to come knock on my door and say, oh, here's a job for you. And see, it'd be very easy to blame the fact that I didn't have a high school diploma, that I had no job experience. I didn't even know how to go get a job. It would have been very easy to sit at home and blame the external conditions and saying, well, this is why I don't have a job. Now, that would be a victim mindset or an external locus of control. But instead, I just started, what can I do? I don't know how to go about getting a job, but what can I do to start figuring that out? And at the end of the day, I just started driving around town, and I saw a help wanted sign by Pizza Hut. And so I pulled into the parking lot, and I walked in, and I was like, well, I'll apply for a job here. And I got the job. They hired me on the spot. And I started the very next day. So my point here, that resilient people, we all experience adversity or tough times. What's important for us to be resilient is to focus on what we can control and influence. It's taking action on the things that we can effect. I've heard the analogy somewhere, and I don't remember where, but it's kind of like we're standing in front of a locked door. When we experience adversity in life or a situation that's challenging us or frustrating us, it's standing in front of that locked door, and we've kind of got two choices. We can let that locked door turn us away, or we can start searching through our pockets for the keys. It's a locked door, but what keys do I have in my pocket that I can use to open that door? And I think that's really powerful when it comes to resilience, because it's focusing on what keys do I have? Instead of saying I can't open that door and taking it as an excuse and sitting down and quitting, we're saying, well, here it's locked, but I bet I've got a key that fits. Let me find it. So really enjoying Dr. Herman's work, and I'm sure I'll share another nugget as I go. But the next couple of episodes will be focusing on the other two elements of resilience, but we'll save them until next time.
Start increasing your influence and maximizing your potential with Ria's audiobooks. Available at audible.com, amazon.com, and iBooks. Please visit riastory.com to learn about Ria's books, resources, speaking, and training programs. Thanks for listening.